Tim Mahoney is back tonight talking about an important amendment. Is it the most important, question mark, because it's the first one?
Well, that's certainly what the founding fathers thought. There's a reason that they put it number one, and that, of course, is the First Amendment, freedom of speech. They did think it was the most important, and that's why they put it number one. So let's, obviously with Jimmy Kimmel coming back on the air last night, this is resurged itself as another conversation, which is a good thing. We should continually be having conversations about this amendment and the other amendments. So let's remember what we're talking about. So there's 5 protections in the First Amendment. Speech, we know that one. Press, we got to remember that. Peaceably assemble, religion, and to petition the government for grievances and redress, right?
Okay.
So, some clarifications on that with speech. Remember, this is government censorship. It's not individual censorship. It's a government action, which arguably is what happened with Jimmy Kimmel, even though it was Disney that was doing that. It was government implemented. Press, remember, we always protect news and opinions. Those two things, and there's certain things that the Supreme Court has been unbelievably consistent on. One of the big ones we're going to talk about today. Peaceably assemble and protest, and obviously you've got to do that within certain parameters, and that's something else that we're going to talk about. Religion, it's protected that you get to do your own religion. But it was also, very much discussed that everybody's religion is protected and there is no national religion.
Sure.
And then to petition the court, this is like the writ of habeas corpus idea. This means we can't put you in jail. You get to petition to the court and say, show me what's going on, or I get to petition the government and say, why is it that I'm being treated in this fashion? So you always are supposed to have access to a tribunal. And we also know historical times when that has not necessarily been the case. So those are the 5 basic protections. Now, we know that they're not absolute. You don't get to just say anything. There's certain restrictions to this. Number one, we talked about it's got to be done by the government. If it's not done by the government, then it's not a First Amendment issue. Anytime you're talking about amendments, you're talking about government action. Like the freedom of speech not being absolute. Defamation, you don't get to defame, you don't libel, those things are, and it's always going to be a balancing test as to what that means and when that is, depending upon who's the person who's being defamed or who's liable against. You don't get to say things like fire in a crowded theater. You know, that's one of the first examples. Everybody nods their head when they hear that. You guys are all nodding your heads. Because we all know that there are limitations. Just because you have a freedom of speech doesn't mean you have an absolute freedom of speech. So now let's talk about Jimmy, because this is one of those areas that comes up because of the nature of the speech. And this would qualify as what's called political satire. This wasn't news. This wasn't proportioned to be news. This was an opinion. This was political satire. And if you've never seen The People versus Larry Flint, it's a spectacular movie, and it's based on the true story. Now, it is a movie based on, so anytime it's a movie, they take liberties with it. But the case is Hustler Magazine versus Jerry Falwell. And Jerry Falwell came out as a huge critic and Hustler Magazine, and Larry Flint, Hustler Magazine was banned in many areas of the South, and he got himself arrested on purpose in order to try to assert his First Amendment rights with regards to that. Ultimately, he was shot on his way to court and paralyzed. Whomever did that, it was never prosecuted and never arrested, and there was a lot of theories that that was on purpose because they didn't really care about arresting the person that shot Larry Flint. But ultimately then, Jerry Falwell led a lot of this, along with somebody else who ended up to be a significant part of U.S. history. It was the guy that caused the savings and loan crisis, also was one of the people that led the charge against Larry Flint. But Larry Flint then printed an expose about Jerry Falwell that, if you go look at it, don't show it to your kids. It was very, very explicit and derogatory, and without getting too much, it discussed the nature of a private activity and put it in a way that was really, really rough. It also was clearly labeled as political satire. They were very careful to say that this was political satire. And it went up in front of the Supreme Court, and at the time, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court was a guy by the name of Rehnquist, one of the most conservative justices we've ever had. And they did the argument, and you should, the movie depicts this part really, really well, because they line by line redid the argument that was had in front of the Supreme Court and was done by Jerry Falwell's attorney. The opinion was unanimous, 9-0, that they said this was protected speech. It shocked the conservative right considerably, but one thing to remember when we talk about Supreme Court judges, we talk about conservative and liberal judges, and those, we talk about them in the wrong way. The labels for those when it comes to Supreme Court judges aren't the same as the labels for those that get elected. So we try and put the same kind of, but that's a square peg in a round hole. One thing about conservative judges is they are incredibly pro First Amendment. Everything is speech, and that can be shown by the recent Supreme Court decision, which said your political contributions in the form of money are speech, and so restrictions on those violate the First Amendment of the Constitution. That's how far the First Amendment goes for them. Everything's covered. For the quote-unquote liberal judges, it's more the Fourth Amendment. It's more the right against search and seizure and intrusions. That's a more significant amendment for them. The right against self-incrimination, the right against double jeopardy. But First Amendment is big in front of the Supreme Court, and political satire is always covered, which is what we were dealing with Jimmy.
You have proved the point I've always thought about the First Amendment. Why is it not 5 different amendments?
Well, that's true. Yeah, it should be.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Thank you so much. Game Day is next on GDS. Kelly Ridgell's back to tell us all about this year's Knicks home run. We're getting you ready for the new Fox game show, which is called 99 to Beat. We'll be right back.